capital. And this is in nominal dollars. This data comes from the Bureau of the Census, and it's in what's called a historical census data file. And for some reason, because we represent mayors, the census doesn't mind giving us the information. Next slide, please. So here is constant dollars. Okay, what you just saw in nominal dollars, this is constant dollars. With inflation deflated to 2008 equaling 100% or $1. So you see the plateau, and especially on the green capital spending, you see it starts to decline. And this is the problem. When we have limited amount of money, how are we going to spend it? And of course, you can raise rates repeatedly, we're going to have to. But the political process of raising rates does not follow very closely the regulatory imposition of unfunded mandates. There's always a lag period, and there's always resistance. But the problem is this: you can see that even total spending starts to peak out. Now, if you were to put the, this is important, ARRA stimulus, the $6 billion in 2009 would be truly compared to about 98 to 100 billion of local government spending. And that $6 billion is in that 100 billion of local government spending. So did the ARA really spike anything? It is a very short-term, very small impact at the end of the day. And this was the question that I think we had before: is it likely to get there? Is Congress likely to do anything different? We needed to have a benchmark, and so we took gross domestic product, non-military, I should say non-defense. And if you look at non-defense spending over this time, on average, 6 to 7 tenths of 1% of GDP was spent by the local government on water and wastewater. All-in costs, O&M, capital. I also broke this down in the report just by capital as well, so you can get that segmented out. The SRF, the preeminent federal program for water and sewer, capital financial assistance from the feds. Preeminent program. 6/100ths of 1%. Excuse me, 6/10,000ths of 1% of GDP. If you take SRF as a rolling average, because we know you borrow, but you pay back in, and it's supposed to grow over time. At its very best, it's 2/1000ths of 1% of GDP, compared to our 0.6 to 0.7 tenths of GDP at local government. So you see the disparity. They think, Congress thinks, this $2 billion a year is saving us. They have vague self-confidence. We've solved that problem. And so when you put it in a benchmark and compare it, they haven't solved anything. In fact, the number and the cost of unfunded mandates each year far outstrips what they provide. How do we come to this on the SRF? How do we come to that conclusion? We look at face value. Okay, so Greg, I'm going to give you $100, and I'm going to give you 50. Who has the greatest face value? Yeah, right? I'm going to give you a grant. I'm going to give you a loan, which has the greatest face value. If I give you a loan that has a 1 to 3% better rate than a commercial rate or a municipal obligation bond, that's the face value of that loan. That SRF is a grant to the state but a loan to the city. And the face value of that loan is the delta in the interest rate and whatever capital over amortization period that saves you. You put all that together, because it's a loan, it's not much. Now, do we not want it then? Absolutely, we want it, because we have 48 spending silos in every city. And every one of those silos, like the water commissioner, the roads, the parks, they're all good people, and they've all been well-versed the city council to give them money. But when you look at GDP growth over that 53-year period that we're talking about, the amount of money spent by local government on water and wastewater has doubled 5 times, but GDP has only doubled 4 times. If you're not creating the wealth, it ain't going to be there. You know, that's your question. Will we be able to pay it? Well, we will if the GDP grows, because the amount of money that's going to be spent on water and wastewater is going to double again. If it's doubled 5 times in 53 years, my money is on it doubling a few times in the next 20. Now, will GDP grow and be able to allow us to afford the devotion of social resources to this function? Maybe yes, maybe no. If it doesn't, what happens? Zero-sum game. Are we going to take from the schools? Who's going to get in front of that line? Right? So we're going to have the PVC Pipe Association up there saying, "Now we're going to take it from the kids." Well, this is America, right? So of course we're going to be right behind you and crusade on that. But think about it. You have to rob Peter to pay Paul in order to get there, unless the wealth is created. And at the same time, we have these growing federal mandates that keep changing the arithmetic, and it makes it more expensive. So go to the next slide, please. Let's just break this down on water versus wastewater. This is just public water, and you can see how, now of course these are constant dollars, so these are inflation adjusted 2008. You can see what's happening here, and a very important one is the capital spending to you folks on the water investment. You see how flat it is. But what I think is also very important for you to understand and make your cases to potential clients is the purple line. The O&M, it's flatter than we've seen it, but still rising. The O&M may be a function of unaccounted for water loss. Okay, so there's a piece of a valuable piece of the jigsaw puzzle in there for you to make your case as well. We'll go to the next one, please. This is the one that drives me crazy. This is wastewater, and look at what's happening to inflation-adjusted capital spending. It's going down. This, I think, is symptomatic of our next 10 years. So while we can project that costs are going to increase, they will. Will we be able to keep up with spending them? We don't know. Have the last slide, please, or the next one. All right, this is my last one here. So what I did here was I just focused on the wastewater part, and I wanted to put the nominal and the constant dollars into some perspective. Now, something which is a bit different about the way I look at this as author of this report, because there is so many misnomers in Washington, D.C. about the whole water issue, I find that it's problematic if you talk about 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. You really have to have a robust analysis. In my humble opinion, a robust analysis is you can look at a full decade's worth of spending. So that's why I have 60 to 69, down to 90 to 99, and then a 9-year period, 2000 to 2008. Now these are robust numbers because within a decade you can have ups and downs, but you can have a fairly accurate snapshot, unlike the kind of discussions that we have in Washington, which is, well, what did we give the SRF last year, Senator? Well, I think we gave it $2 billion. Well, the administration says let's give it less, and Congress says let's give it more, and they split the baby, and we end up with roughly about $2 billion in loans. Okay, not in grants. So when you talk about it that way, you lose this perspective of how much are you really spending, and what is the trend. So here, when you look at capital outlay in nominal dollars, you can see that every decade it goes up. But when you look at